In this tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at exercise 8-1 in the book. I've already gone ahead and drawn the object, and what we're going to be focusing on this week is how to take a drawing in 2D using paper space and model space to create a viewport and actually place the dimensions into our paper space for the drawing. So once I have this drawn, the first thing I need to do is I'm going to click on Layout 1. This is where my border is, and you guys are going to be using the templates that you created last week to actually do the dimensioning for this object. So the first thing that I want to do is create a viewport. Now, there's buttons up here that you can use to do all this, but I find it's much faster if you just learn some of the hotkeys. So we're going to talk about the hotkey for making a viewport. It's MV. If you type MV and hit enter, you can then draw a corner to specify your viewport. Once you have that done, if you click on this, you can come up here and change the layer to the viewports layer that you previously created. The other thing that I want to do is I want to come down here to the viewport scale, and I want to change this to 1:1, so I got 100%. Now I'm going to hit escape to clear that, and my object is off the screen a little bit, so I'm going to double click inside the viewport, and that activates the viewport. Now I can just pan this thing over to where it's about in the middle, and then go back and double click back outside the viewport. The one thing that you want to make sure is that you're always working in paper space when you're placing your dimensions. There's two ways to tell. If I double click inside this viewport, you can see that I get my view cube up here, my navigation buttons on the side, I've got a UCS down here, and it's got the all the view modes and stuff up here at the top of the screen. It doesn't really tell me anywhere else that it's in model space, but if we just look for all of these indicators, then it's a pretty good idea of what we got going on. When I double click back outside of it, all of that stuff disappears, so that lets me know that I'm working in the layout tab. So the next thing I want to do is I want to begin to place the dimensions, and I'm going to dimension this thing very similar to the way that it's dimensioned in the book, just for ease. Now, ASME Y14.5 has specified distances for everything. The first dimension should be, 0.4 inches off. The second dimension should be roughly like 0.26 in between dimensions, but just for the purposes of this class, every company has their own standards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, just do it to where it's neat and they look consistent. So here again, we've got all of our tools up here that we use, and this button right here is going to be our dimension. We're going to use this for some of the things. This dimension command actually combines a lot of the other dimension commands. So when we click on this, if we select 2 points right here, it'll actually give us a dimension coming off of here. And that dimension is 1.56. So we can use that to create several different types of dimensions. If you feel uncomfortable using this dimension command, you can just use this drop down here and you can get to your linear, your angular, your radius, your diameter. All of that stuff is also included right here. Before I place any dimensions though, I want to make sure that I come in here and change to my dimension layer. So now I can begin to place my dimensions. So we'll click here to here and bring out this 1.56. Next I'm going to do the overall height, which was here to here, and that's going to give me 3. Just continuing around, like I said, I'm just placing the dimensions just like they were placed in the book. It's going to be the easiest way to get used to how these are to be placed. The angular dimension that exists right here, this one's going to be a little different. So I'm going to go to the angular dimension, and I'm going to select this line and this line. Now where I place this dimension is going to dictate how it's actually called out. So I want to drag this over to here, sort of like they did in the book, so that I could make sure that I get a 45-degree dimension. The next dimension I'm going to place is going to be a linear dimension from here to here, which is my 2.25. And then my next one, I'm going to dimension this line, but I'm going to show you how to do it wrong first. And I know that sounds weird, but if you just click this line and bring it up, you get your 0.75. Now, while that dimension is accurate, if we look, there is no gap right here. And there has to be a gap in between your object line and your extension line for your dimension. So when you place dimensions that are for like cutouts or anything, you always want to make sure that when you pick your 2 points, you pick the uppermost point and then a lower point. And then I can bring that off as the 0.75 over here. The last dimension that we have is going to be dimension 3 in the book, which is a 46 degree dimension for this line right here. So I'll go back to my angular. We'll select this line and this line. And this is actually bringing it out over to here. And I'll place it right up top here. Now, if you look in the book, this is supposed to be a 46 degree dimension. So if I double click on this, you can kind of cheat the system and you can change it to 46. But if you do that, it doesn't actually change the dimension value. This line is still the same. It's still wrong. So what you want to do to fix that problem, I'm going to delete that dimension because I know that it's wrong. I'm going to go back to my model tab and I'm going to draw a line. And for some reason I turned snap on. I'm going to draw a line from here. I'm going to tab over and type 46 here and bring that up. Now that looks like I've got the line in there pretty accurate to where it's supposed to be. So this is going to raise a separate question, is why is my dimension wrong? So if I come back in here into my paper space on layout 1, I'm just going to take another look, and maybe I clicked something wrong. So I'm going to go back into my angular dimension and select this line and this line again, and I can see that it's still showing me a 44 degree. But when I go back to the model, if I do a list on this object, it should tell me what the actual angle is. Angle in XY plane is 46. So I'm not 100% sure why it's coming up as a 44 on the drawing. That is definitely something that it shouldn't be coming up as. But I'm going to go ahead and dimension this. I have verified that this is 46 in the model. So when I come in here and put it in, even though it says 44, I am going to change this to 46 degrees, and the degree symbol is %D. You want to make sure that if you have to modify a dimension because it's not coming in accurately, just please make sure that you go back and verify that the line is actually correct before you make a change like that. Sometimes in paper space, model space, things kind of get weird sometimes, but as long as your dimensions are accurate, you shouldn't have any problems with the assignment. So once you have all the dimensions placed, I'm just going to do a final verification that I've got in all of the dimensions that I'm supposed to have in for this one. This object is now complete.